Did you know that one of the most played composers by jazz musicians around the world is Brazilian? His name was Antonio Carlos Brasileiro de Almeida Jobim, or simply Tom Jobim, and his music crossed oceans, borders, and generations. More than a composer, he was a bridge between Brazil and the world, between samba and jazz, between the poetry of nature and the complexity of harmony. Tom Jobim introduced the world to the subtle elegance of bossa nova, a musical movement that whispered where others shouted, that danced where others marched. And even today, decades after his passing, his compositions are studied and performed in jazz clubs, universities, and festivals all over the globe. So how did this quiet man from Rio de Janeiro become one of the most influential names in global music? Let's go back to the late 1950s. Brazil was experiencing a cultural boom, and in the vibrant neighborhoods of Rio de Janeiro, something new was taking shape. A sound that mixed the relaxed syncopation of samba with the refined harmonies of American jazz. This was bossa nova. At the core of this movement were names like João Gilberto, Vinicius de Moraes, and Tom Jobim, but Jobim stood out. He wasn't just another songwriter. He was a classically trained pianist who admired Debussy and Ravel as much as he loved the rhythms of the streets. This duality gave his music an emotional richness that was both technically sophisticated and deeply human. With Chega de Saudade, a song written with Vinicius and popularized by João Gilberto, Jobim helped launch what would become a revolution in Brazilian music. The song's relaxed groove, melodic grace, and rich harmonic vocabulary introduced the aesthetic that defined bossa nova: intimate, understated, and poetic. It didn't take long for this sound to cross borders. In 1962, a historic concert at Carnegie Hall in New York introduced bossa nova to the American public. The reaction was immediate. Critics praised its originality, musicians admired its sophistication, and the world started to pay attention. Then came the defining moment, the release of the album Getz Gilberto in 1964, featuring saxophonist Stan Getz, singer João Gilberto, and Tom Jobim on piano. The album was an instant classic, and with it came one of the most iconic songs ever recorded, The Girl from Ipanema. Sung in English by Astrid Gilberto, the song became a global sensation, reaching the top of the American charts and winning a Grammy Award. Suddenly, the sounds of Ipanema and Copacabana were playing in cafes in Paris, jazz clubs in Chicago, and lounges in Tokyo. Jobim's music had gone global, but perhaps the most symbolic moment of Jobim's international acclaim was his collaboration with none other than Frank Sinatra. In 1967, the two artists recorded the elegant and timeless album Francis Albert Sinatra and Antonio Carlos Jobim. It was a delicate blend of styles, Sinatra's smooth phrasing over Jobim's minimalist arrangements, singing classics like Dindy, Wave, How Insensitive, and Quiet Nights of Quiet Stars. The result? A masterpiece of subtlety and intimacy. That same year, Jobim joined Sinatra on national television in the United States, performing on the special A Man and His Music plus Ella plus Jobim. It was a landmark moment. Millions of Americans witnessed the fusion of North and South, of English and Portuguese, of swing and saudade. Sinatra later referred to Jobim as one of the greatest composers of our time. From there, Jobim became a familiar presence in the American media. He appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, The Andy Williams Show, and other iconic television programs, always with a quiet smile, a gentle tone, and a piano nearby. Despite his growing fame, Jobim never changed who he was. He remained soft-spoken, deeply connected to nature, and proudly Brazilian. He once said, "I am the composer of the forest, of the birds, of the rain." And his music reflected that. It wasn't just the American public who embraced Jobim. Many of the greatest voices in jazz and popular music recorded his songs. Ella Fitzgerald released a full album of Jobim's work, interpreting Desafinado and Wave, with her unmistakable grace. Sarah Vaughan delivered stunning renditions of Dindy and Triste. Tony Bennett sang The Waters of March in one of the most beloved versions of the song. Diana Krall, Michael Bublé, Sting, and countless others have honored his legacy. Jobim's music traveled effortlessly across borders and genres. It was sophisticated enough for jazz musicians and emotionally honest enough to connect with any listener, anywhere. And nowhere is his influence more visible than in The Real Book, a collection of jazz standards used by musicians around the world. It includes more than 20 of his compositions, making Jobim one of the most featured non-American composers in the book. Wave, Agua de Beber, Corcovado, How Insensitive, One Note Samba, Once I Loved, Desafinado. These songs are now part of the international jazz vocabulary. They are played in jam sessions from New York to Seoul, from Paris to São Paulo. But what's perhaps most remarkable is that Tom Jobim never compromised his artistic identity. He didn't adapt his music to the American market. Instead, he invited the world into the musical world of Brazil. He offered poetry, silence, subtlety, and the world accepted the invitation. Even decades after his death in 1994, Jobim's music remains alive. In orchestras, in jazz trios, in acoustic covers, in soundtracks, and in the fingers of students learning their first bossa nova chord. He was more than a successful musician. He was a silent revolutionary, someone who proved that beauty doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Tom Jobim showed that a single chord, placed just right, can move a listener more than any complex arrangement. That the space between notes matters as much as the notes themselves. That music can whisper and still be heard around the world. So the next time you hear a gentle samba rhythm, a rich jazz chord, or the sound of a sea breeze in a song, listen closely. There might be a little piece of Jobim in it. And now I'll ask you, what's your favorite Tom Jobim song? See you next time. And as the master once wrote, my soul sings. I see Rio de Janeiro. I'm dying of longing.